Conceive, believe, achieve.
This is former UFC middleweight champion of the world, Michael Bisping.
Paddy the Baddy here. You're listening to Combat Sports UK.
And you're watching Combat Sports UK.
So hello, it's Adam here from Combat Sports UK. If you're seeing it, I've got two cameras on right now. I'm also speaking to the man, the legend, Mr. Mike Bidwell. Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm awesome. How are you today?
I am feeling fine and dandy, which is amazing. So we're talking to Mike. Mike is a legend in the BJJ world, although he'll always underplay that. Oh, no, I'm not. Oh, no. But he's a legend in the BJJ world. And it's certainly helped me personally in my game for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu after I discovered him on YouTube. If you're not sure who he actually is, here's a little video of what he does best.
All right, ninjas. What up, ninjas? 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 Ninjas? What up, ninjas? What up, ninjas? Mike Spider Ninja Bidwell here. Somebody once said, like in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the guys that get their black belts the quickest and the guys who get their black belts the longest have the best story. So I fall into the latter category. I'm one of the guys that took forever to get his black belt.
So, Mike, thank you so much for joining us today for Combat Sports UK. I know we've got about a 7-hour difference. So,
So what time is it where you are?
So we are currently at 10 past 5 at the moment where we are.
Oh my gosh. So me, it's morning. I'm just getting up a few hours ago.
It feels like I was where you are about 7 hours ago is what it feels like.
So are you drinking coffee right now or are you drinking just...
Yeah. Well, I also got a taxi company in where I work. So at the moment, I've got to be working till like 2 in the morning. So I need the coffee.
I drink coffee in the evening, so that's okay.
If there's too much blood in my coffee stream, then I don't really understand how.
I think you're like I am. Like, yeah, I'm a big coffee guy. Like, I appreciate my coffee. Not much happens without coffee.
It doesn't. You're right. Yeah. So with Mike, I discovered him. It would have been probably about 4 years ago. It's definitely pre-COVID. I found you on YouTube and Facebook, and I just liked. But first of all, what you were doing was it was called BJJ over 40, which now I'm nearly 40, and obviously that grabbed my attention. And I'm 37 in like this month coming. So I'm at the age now where, and you're quite right in the things that you've spoken about. You go, you know what? You're as young as you feel, but sometimes you're not. Actually,
yeah. So and I think that BJJ after 40, like you're in the BJJ before 40, and that's where it actually starts. Like you don't wait till you're 40 and you're like, you know what? Although everybody kind of does this, but you don't want to wait till 40 and say, you know what? Now it's time to think about recovery. Now I better start stretching. You know what I mean? It's not like something you want to start at 40. Although if it comes to you at 40, that's great. But before 40 is even smarter because now you're sitting the groundwork. You're literally laying the groundwork for your 40s. Because it is going to be a little bit different than maybe when you were 30 years old, of course.
Mm-hmm. How did you find it? Was a defining point where you decided that you were going to set up the brand? I suppose it is a brand, but the BJJ over 40. What was the point where you're going? You know what? I'm going to start raising the flag for us guys that aren't 20 years of age.
So for me, it was I'm kind of a weird case with the belts in jiu-jitsu. So, you know, in jiu-jitsu, there's 4 belts. I got my brown belt in 2001, and then I got my black belt in 2014. So you do the math,
wow.
that's 13 years.
Yeah.
And of course, the question is always, you know, did you train the whole time? I did train the whole time, but I moved around. I switched schools. I relocated a bunch of times, and those things, you know, in jiu-jitsu, it's not like, you know, other martial arts sometimes where you can just pick it up where you left off. It's about, you know, creating a relationship with a new person now, with a new black belt instructor, and building that, you know, that trust and now all of that. So there was a little bit of that and just a lot of life stuff. So I was a brown belt for 13 years. And when I turned 42, I looked a lot different. I was like probably 40 pounds heavier than I am right now, 40, 50 pounds heavier than I am right now. I was kind of out of shape. I was still, you know, training, but I was kind of turning into the sloppy brown belt. You know, I was not in my best shape. And jiu-jitsu, sometimes you can train and not be in your best shape and still train okay to a degree. I definitely wasn't at my peak performance level. So I had my own kind of like, I guess, kind of wake up. And the wake up was my daughter at the time. She was, you know, she was doing jiu-jitsu since she was like 5. And I always told her, like, if you ever wanted to do a tournament, there's no pressure. But if you ever did do a tournament, you know, daddy will do the tournament with you. And so now she's like 8 or 9 years old, and she's like, I think I want to do a jiu-jitsu tournament. And, you know, and at that point, you know, I was 42 and I hadn't actually competed for years, you know, in my early 30s, you know, when I first started jiu-jitsu, you know, I hadn't competed, you know, since before I was a brown belt. And so I signed up for the tournament with her, and I signed up, you know, at the time I was like about 205 in terms of weight. So I signed up for 175, you know, 25, 30 pounds lighter than her. Right. So, or lighter than, you know, where I was at that time.
Yeah.
And so I had to get myself in shape, and I went to a tournament, and I kind of got hooked on it, and I wanted to start competing again. So at that point I created a community. I said, you know, let's start something called BJJ After 40. And at the time it was just really like, I was posting memes. I wasn't doing a lot with it. And then it started taking off, especially once I got my black belt in 2014. It really started kind of blowing up. It started taking off. And so then, you know, it has really grown into really like a worldwide community now. We have, you know, a huge following. It's a great community. And I love that it's really like a community. Like everybody on there is posting stuff and asking questions. And it's really about everybody kind of helping each other through this process.
I mean, yeah, I'm part of the group, and there's nothing but love in there. You know, someone will get like their first stripe, and everyone will celebrate that as much as the guy who goes, "I've just got my black belt." You know, everyone I mean, that's the wonderful thing of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, generally speaking, not all the time, but most of the time, everyone is rooting because we know how important that first stripe is.
Yeah, and that's what I love about that community and people should check it out. It's just on Facebook. It's a private group called BJJ After 40. I think we're up to like 22,000 members on there now. It's only been up for like a short period of time. It's kind of growing really fast. It kind of grew faster than like I can almost control it at this point, because there's a lot that goes into like running these sites in terms of just running the mechanics of it. But yeah, like it's a great community, and I love that I don't actually have to post anything. It's just the community posting. And like you said, it's I got my first stripe on my white belt. It's somebody getting their black belt. It's everything in between there too. It's pretty awesome.
And it's nice and it's like, you know, in some sports, and I've certainly witnessed it, where someone will ask what we'll call it a newbie question, right? But it's a question, and it's probably a question that's every person at one point in their life has come across or even thought it, gone, I wonder how, and then either are brave enough to just say it or they don't. And it's nice. There was one the other day, I think, that said something about they're trying to finish like the Anaconda, but they couldn't figure out how to create the space to get the arm in. And then, you know, I responded, would you know, pull the arm in a little bit. I've got short little T-Rex arms, and pulling it in and create a little bit of space. And, you know, there's no like, what you've created is a real nice, it's a nice environment. It's where you can go, I can ask a newbie question and not be scrutinized,
right? And not be like, you know, treated, because I've seen some of that. Like you see it in other like activities and stuff. If you're, you know, part of discussion groups, there's always that weird, you know, toxicity and you know, people with just really crappy attitudes. There's really none of that on there, and there's nothing that I have to do from an administrative point to even police it. It's good attitudes and people like posting cool stuff. So yeah, I love that part of it.
I think that stems though from your own. I mean, if you're not gonna join BJJ After 40 if you're not into what you're doing, right? I mean, well, I wouldn't have thought so. I mean, it's like, it doesn't make sense. So I think that's probably all credit to yourself, really, because you've always come across. I mean, obviously, I don't know you personally. I can only say what I've witnessed from the videos that I've ever watched, and it always comes across like a real, just cool, relaxed. Like I even love like the little things, like I don't know if I haven't seen you do it for a little while. We used to go like, okay, ninjas, right, let's do this.
Right? Yeah, like you know what I mean. I'm a pretty chill dude. Like that's just kind of me, and and that was a big part of like starting the BJJ After 40 and just in my own like transformation of like losing weight and trying to get into my best shape and really, going after my black belt and really pursuing that was, like just, having a good attitude about it and really just falling in love with the martial arts again. I've been doing martial arts my whole life, since I was a teenager. I've done other martial arts and things like that. But I just love it. And I never want to like lose that excitement about it. And what's cool about jujitsu is like, as you know, like the ability to create, the ability to play with new moves, all of that is truly infinite. You could spend your whole life on just one portion of jujitsu and really never get to the end of it because it's crazy that there's so much ability to create. So that's what excites me. Like when I just put out this instructional with BJJ Fanatics. Every time I put something new out, I'm so excited about creating. I can't even tell you, it plays out in my brain 24 hours a day, like the moves. Like I can't even sleep at night. I'll wake up in the middle of the night, like, just going through, like chaining moves together. It's like, I tell my wife, I just got to get it out of me because if I don't get it out of me, it's going to drive me crazy. I have to sometimes tell my brain in the middle of the night, dude, it's not jujitsu time right now. Like we need to get some sleep right now. And I literally have to shut off my brain sometimes because it just keeps going. That's how much I love it. You know what I mean? It's part of my DNA now.
Yeah. I mean, how did you find when you, so you said you took some time off competition. Did you find that in that 10-year or ish or so gap, did you find that either the level changed, or is it because the game didn't really change as you were 10 years older? Like, it was any noticeable differences between when you last competed and when you went, oh, do you know what? I'm going to pick this back up again.
Here's the difference for me was when I was a younger competitor, like, let's say we go back to like when I was a purple belt, right? And even like, I started in 1996. So I was doing, pretty much like every tournament back then. And it was different back then because here's a good difference. Like nobody had like a fight camp for a tournament. Like it was like, hey dude, there's a tournament next week. You want to go? And it was like, 8 hours away, and we drove there and we just went into a tournament. Like it wasn't like there was any real true preparation back then. Like here's a good example. I competed in 1998 up in Canada. It was like, I think it was called the Canadian Open. Okay. I was at the time, so it was 1998. I started in 96. So I've been grappling for about 2 years. Because I was 2 years in overtraining, I was now in the advanced division. And in the division below me was Rumio Sato. If you ever heard of Rumio Sato, he's a legend in Japan, like legend in MMA, just incredible, right? The division above me, which I didn't know, so I cut weight. I made weight. The division above me, which I went into, I ended up my first match against Marcio Fatosa. So Marcio Fatosa is like the general, the head of Gracie Barra. He was a black belt then. Like he was a black belt in 1998. And so I remember like looking at this dude and his ears were all gnarly and shit. And I was like, oh dear God. And so to make it even crazier, I'm coaching my teammates. And then I hear over the speaker, Mike Bidwell, ring 4, final call. I was like, final call? What does that even mean? You know what I mean? So I run over there. I'm in my street clothes and there's this Brazilian guy out there in his shorts, kind of moving around, waiting for me. And I'm in my street clothes still, like literally in my street clothes. I strip off my clothes. I go out there. The only thing that I did halfway decent in the entire match was he mounted me. I got my guard back for a second, and then he remounted me and he Ezekiel'd me. No-gi Ezekiel. The whole thing was probably over in under a minute. And that's kind of the difference between back then and now, right? Back then, there was no preparation. You had no idea who you were going to go against. The rules were very different. Everything was kind of chaotic. And then coming back to tournaments, years later, it just was like everything's organized now. And like, there's actually people like your age to compete against. There's people actually your weight now versus back then, there might be a guy that's 25 pounds heavier than you. And so like, that's really kind of the difference that I see is the sports really, it had to grow. It had to grow a little bit. It had to go through the growing pains. And now it's very professional and you see it on, on T now, grappling on TV, not just MMA.
Well, I mean, I mean, back then, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu certainly wasn't where it is now. Now it's meant every week there's another open somewhere. And I know that's in the UK. I mean, I'm sure it's a similar thing where you are. But yeah, so your first match is. So
yeah, like, you know what I mean? It's like,
I'm sure I'll be absolutely fine in this. And then you're like, oh, hang on, why has he got cauliflower? What's those? What do you call them?
but here's what's crazy too. I don't think I knew who he was until years later. Like, even when I left the tournament, I don't think I knew that was like Marcio Fatosa. And then I think I saw some pictures and I was like, that's that dude. Holy crap. You know what I mean? That guy's like, he's literally like a legend, a legend in 1998 already. You know what I'm saying? Like, so yeah, big difference than nowadays for sure.
Then how did you find, obviously physically, did you find the pace? I mean, I've found certainly when you go through the belts, because now there are enough competitors to have the divisions that you have. White belt is mental. It's just crazy. Blue belt, no one does anything. And you're like, oh, this is weird. And then purple belt is even more chilled out, but it's not chilled out. It's because they know if I mess up, if I move a little bit to the left,
right,
I am done. But then it slows down. How did you find the competitions as you were going up through the belts and you got to the sort of brown belt level?
So, it's a lot different back then, you know what I mean? Because there weren't like really the levels in that way, I was actually never a blue belt. Isn't that weird? Like, I went from white to purple belt, but I had been training so when I started in 1996, I said I'd only been grappling a couple years, but I'd already been kind of like doing martial arts. And we were like, even in 96, we were watching videos before that after 1993, when Hoist fought in the UFC, I was a martial artist at the time and heavily into the martial arts and teaching and all that. And I was doing traditional martial arts. That definitely woke me up. And I was like, wow, what is this grappling stuff? This is really interesting. It kind of blew me away as a young martial artist because I was like, wow, I'd never seen anything like that before, joint locks and submissions and all of that. So that was what kind of like hooked me back then. So I'd already been kind of grappling for a few years. But when I officially started in 1996, I started training with Alon Goes under Carlson Gracie and Carlson Gracie Sr. at the time. And, I trained with Alon, so he gave me my purple belt in 1999. So I'd already been training probably for about 5 or 6 years. And so he just one day just literally went from like white belt to purple belt. So I never actually competed as a blue belt. I competed as a white belt. And in most tournaments, it was like, like I said before, it was like, if you've been grappling for 2 years and over, you're now in the advanced division. Yeah. Versus nowadays, it's nice how it's like you literally can compete at blue belt, you can compete at purple or white belt, blue belt, purple belt, brown belt, black belt. So you have all of those nice, different divisions and all of that to make it, I think, a lot more safer and better for the competitors and better competitive matches in that way. So I never really competed as a blue belt. It was, and honestly, most of the tournaments back then were kind of like that. It was like 2 years and over. So for me, it was very different competing than.
Now it even seems mental saying they go 2 years. You was in the advanced division. Like, what? 2 years? You've not even got out of white belt. Like, you're still
right. Isn't it crazy? Like, but and it's not like there weren't that many people competing because there were less tournaments. But when there was a tournament, there was actually like a pretty good amount of people there. But it was just, you had to go far to go to a tournament. I remember just traveling everywhere to get to a tournament. It wasn't like, nowadays, like I live in Colorado in the US and dude, there's tournaments all the time here. I can't even keep track. People tell me there's a tournament Saturday, and you're like, oh wow. Back in the day, you'd be like, there's a tournament coming in 6 months. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. Yeah. But nowadays, it's literally like every weekend.
How did you find? Obviously, the belt system is very different from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu than pretty much, I would say, almost any other martial art. Yeah. I mean, in terms of like traditional Jiu-Jitsu, I've been training for like 11 years now. And got to black belt reasonably quick. Well, comparatively speaking, it's incredibly quick compared to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But obviously, because that's just the way it works. You got the syllabus, and you learn the syllabus, and you demonstrate, and you compete, and then you. Yeah. With Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, how did you deal with being a brown belt for such a long period of time?
It was, it was hard, honestly. Like, it was definitely hard because. I had people that like, I had started training with in 2001 when I got my brown belt, right? They started as a white belt in 2001 and they got their black belt before I got my black belt. So you know what I mean? Like, and I wasn't like, oh, so sometimes you see something online. You're like, oh, there's that dude. I remember when he started and you're like, oh, that's so great. He's getting his black belt, but fuck, I don't know. Am I ever going to be a black belt? So there's that little bit of a pity party there. But it's like, and I did that thing for a while. Like I even got to the point where I felt like, when I would meet people, they say, oh, what belt are you? I'm like, oh, I'm a brown belt. Or they'd see my belt and they're like, oh, you're a brown belt. Cool. When did you get your brown belt? And I'm like, oh, I got my brown belt in 2001. And I'd laugh about it. I'm like, I'm going to be a brown belt forever. I don't even want a black belt. And I would kind of be, self-deprecating in that way about getting a belt. And so, I always, when I hear people sometimes say to me, like, I don't care about the belts, I always question them about that. I ask them to question themselves about that. What do you mean you don't care about the belts? Are you abstentionating yourself from the process? Because actually the belts in jiu-jitsu mean something. So you get your blue belt, it has meaning to it. Like it's not an easy thing to get a blue belt. At least, right, when I teach, it's not. My students really have to work hard for that, Getting a purple belt for me is not easy. I'm not easy about the belts. None of that's going to be easy, right? But the reward there at each level is going to feel really awesome, right? So me getting into that mindset myself at brown belt of like, well, I don't care about the belts anymore. It doesn't matter to me. I'm here for the training. I'm here for the arm bars. Well, when you get into that mindset and you start to abstentionate yourself from it, then you're literally like putting yourself outside of it. Like you're probably not going to progress. And if the belts actually mean something and they actually signify some sort of progression, and they do, then you're actually abstentionating yourself from the learning process now, not just from the belts. You're actually moving outside of everything now. Because even for myself, when I look at like 13 years at brown belt. Okay. I got my black belt in 2014. It's 2022. It's been 7-8 years now. Right. I learned more in the last 7 years as a black belt than I ever did in that 13 years. Yeah. So me getting into that mindset was definitely putting myself outside the learning process to a pretty high degree, actually, because I've progressed way more now. Like what I'm doing now compared to what I was doing 10 years ago, I feel is like totally different. Even how I think about teaching, how I think about moves, all of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've actually purchased the recent instructor video that you got from BJJ Fanatics, and it's because you've just nailed it for me personally with the lapel. I love the lapel. I've got short little T-Rex arms, so for me, like the lapel, you can add an extra, I don't know, maybe a foot or so with you because you use so much more stuff. But also, once you've got it, you've still got another hand, which is great.
That's the key right there, right?
3 hands now, which is amazing. And I love the way that when you're doing the instruction, if you haven't got it, you should definitely go and get it. A quick plug there. You definitely, and you need it because you teach in a way that's, like some people do things and you go, I don't know, it's not going to work. And you try it and it's not really going for me. Every time I've done one of the things, I mean, in fact, we talk about the working things out, and from your own lapel stuff the other day I was going, because there is one where you go underneath, you pull the lapel out, side control, put it underneath the head, and then you put it underneath the head, and then you go into pull the head up, you go into the baseball bat choke, and then what you do is you talk about if you turn into you then pull the cloth, the lapel over the front, maintaining the back of the head, and then from here I was like, hang on, if I keep my elbow on the back of the head, because if you let the arm go, the head's out. So keep the pressure on the back. I can do like a grotto just from this position, just literally past your neck. You can just grotto from this position, and then if that doesn't work, then you go on tippy toes. What you're doing, you work around, you clock them, and then just do that. That's right. Back. It's beautiful.
That's good. You've been studying.
I'm not saying.
Here's kind of what and hopefully this comes through. Like when you're watching it, I tried to create something that I call it plug and play jujitsu. Okay. Just like if you got a toy, you can plug it in and play with it, right? You don't want to have to get it home and be like, oh shit, these batteries now, and I got to go do this now, and I need this other accessory to even make it work now. So then you're kind of like, that's just too much. Like, and I think a lot of instructionals are taught that way. It's like it's a bunch of random stuff, or maybe it connects together. But then the ultimate question is, does it connect into what I do? Is it plug and play for me? Like, is this going to work? Is it a bunch of random stuff that doesn't work for me, or you go, well, there's just that one good thing, and that's great. Like sometimes we leave seminars and we think like that. We're like, I just got to get one good thing. Really? Yeah. That guy knows a lot of more than one thing. Yeah. You need to get more than one thing, right? Yeah. So I try to teach it in a way that that it's digestible, right? It's like the question, how do you eat an elephant? How do you eat an elephant? You do it one bite, one chunk at a time. But if you look at it like one big elephant, so if you looked at my course as one giant course, it becomes overwhelming. Yeah. But if you teach it in a way that everything connects together, the easiest way to learn something, right, is to pile something on top of what you already know. Add to what you know. Yeah. I know this, I can master this piece. So, right, I want to teach it in a way that's simple. If you notice, I teach everything in 4 steps. 4 steps. My wife and I have been doing this for years. the reason we do it is we teach little kids. You know, her and I love teaching kids. So we've been teaching kids forever. We've always been, even before we had our own academy, every school that we've worked at, we were always the kids instructors. So the question then is like, how do you teach a 6-year-old or a 5-year-old an armbar? How do you teach a 6-year-old the same basic kind of curriculum that an adult's doing? Because that's kind of how it is in jiu-jitsu. So the way that you do that is you make it in 4 really easy steps, right? If they can master these 4 steps, once they get mastery on the first step, we add the second one, then the third one, then the fourth one. And then we add 4 new steps to it. And we start to master those steps. And then everything starts to connect together. And then the learning process becomes a lot easier now because you're just doing what you already know instead of like, oh, I got to figure this out now and all of this stuff, right?
Oh, 100%. I mean, also, it's a good way of doing it. If you can think how you would teach a 6-year-old, how would you talk? You wouldn't say, right, let's go on their first class, go do some chigaris. They're like, what? Well, who was it? So, you know, if you break it down, and you do, I think you definitely hit that. I love the way that you teach. And also, you do it in a way that I resonate. I teach in a very similar fashion, which is, you mentioned about layers, about omnidirection, left, right. So what you do is you don't say, okay, so this is what you're going to do, and this is how you're going to do it. And that's it. You go, this is what you're going to do, so you can do it. However, the person here probably isn't going to let you do it. So they might turn into you. So in which case, you got this. But if they turn away from you, you've got that. And you know what? It might not even work because they might have a thick neck. They might have just got slipped a hand in.
Yes, I love that.
If I'm going to give you options. My job here is to give you choices and options, not to, because you know some people just go, and this is how you do an armbar, for example, and that's the perfect armbar, and you go, but this is assuming the guy's not moving or doing anything, you know. So the way that I teach, when you said about the layers, I'm like, oh, he's right, 100%. You know, it's our job as instructors, particularly like yourself, is not to give you this is the option. It's like there are options, and all of this may work, and all of this may not work. It's all circumstantial. But if I give you something, you have choices. Like you were saying, you can go left, they can go right, you can go up. We're building layers on this, and just a simple thing from the lapel around the back of the head, and you have to go and get this structure from the lapel. You go. I mean, there's about 8 different things, and even then, the bit that I'm enjoying now is okay, let's start from here. What have we got? Oh, I could do that. Does that work? No, it's not going to work. No, this one. Oh, hang on. Oh, have you seen this before? No, I've never seen this. Well, this will work. This will definitely. And it's the artistry of the art, I guess, the martial art, where you can start working stuff out for yourself.
The martial part's easy, right? Like it's easy to be martial. It's easy to be, martial, warrior, warlike. That part's not that hard. Like we all kind of can do that. We can grab onto that, right? It's the art part, right? That's where the balance starts to come in. It's like, I love that saying by Hicks and Gracie, to submit someone is not enough. And I love it. To submit someone is not enough. To make them tap is not enough. Enough would be like to do it artistically, to move smoothly, to feel flawless when you're doing it, to be conscious of what you're doing when you're doing it, right? To me, that's enough, right? That's what I'm looking for, is that feeling. Like, you remember when you're a lower belt and you do an armbar and you get in, it's all kind of crazy and it's like, I kind of got it, or you see somebody do that and you're like, yeah, you got the armbar, but let's clean that up. Let's make that look a lot nicer than what it is right now. Like, it should look a certain way and feel a certain way, for sure.
Almost like matrixy, like, it slows down. You can, and you do it, and it's not. There's no thought. You just go straight into it, and like it flows.
Yeah, and that's there's the word right there, flows. Right, like that's what you're talking about, right? Reaching that flow state, that state of automaticity, where like no mind, mushin. That Japanese word means no mind, right? Where you're not thinking about it anymore. That you can almost step back from it and have that kind of hawk perspective of almost seeing yourself doing the move, right? Like that's powerful. That's 100%. Exciting.
Yeah, it is absolutely, man, and I love it. And so whereabouts are you? So you're in Colorado right now. Who was it? Who was the person that gave you eventually the black belt?
So I eventually got my black belt through Team Balance. They're out of Philadelphia. And then since then, so that was when I lived on the East Coast, but I've since moved now. And I work with Nick Grigoriadis, and Nick is my instructor, my professor now. Nick promoted me to my second degree and coming up here pretty soon for my third degree on my black belt. Nick's amazing. Like, he's check out his stuff. He was one of the co-founders for Jiu-Jitsu Brotherhood. And he runs Subconscious BJJ now, which is who we're affiliated through, which is a great organization. education out of California.
And did you know that you were going to get your black belt, or did he sort of present it?
So I tested for my black belt. Like I actually had to go through a test. So I knew it was coming. So I knew about 3 months before my test came up. There's a great video. You can check it out on my YouTube channel that shows when I got my black belt. I think it's called Journey to Black. And it's a cool little, it kind of documents that story of me losing weight and, getting my black belt and everything. But yeah, that, I knew it was coming. I had a few months to prepare for it. And, it was actually a pretty tough test. I had to go through it's kind of the same thing I do with my students now. Like I went through all of the curriculum, had to know all of the jiu-jitsu self-defense and all of the techniques. And then I rolled, I think for about an hour and a half straight. And it was the rolling. The crazy part about the rolling though, is we did 2-minute rounds. And it was a room full of 100 people. So, and it was every black belt from every county came out for it too. Literally, like everybody came to the school for it. So you had people, your homies that you train with that, you're rolling with them and they're not being an ass. They're working with it. Then you had people you don't even know now that are some purple belt from some other school who's just trying to kill you and you're just dying now, literally dying. Yeah. I even went into the bathroom at one point and was throwing up. That's, you know what I'm saying? That's how crazy the rolling was. It was just insane, but it was worth it. I'm glad I went through something. I like the idea of, going through something to get to something. I don't like the time-based promotions. That's cool if that's how people get their belts. But I like my students to actually go through a test. I think the value of going through a test, I have 4 people next week testing for a blue belt. And in our school, they've been preparing for it now for a couple months, literally going through the curriculum, practicing, drilling, doing all of it. Because I want them to I feel like when you go through a test on the curriculum, you actually know it. Yeah. Versus someone just gives you a belt, you're good at what you're good at, which is great. But I think the true blessing in jiu-jitsu is to pass the art on. And that's for me what black belt is about. If I'm going to pass the art on, I need to pass it on that it fits into everybody, plug and play. There's a lot of stuff that Mike Bidwell can do, that not everybody else can do. And I recognize that. And I always try to teach in a way that addresses that, right? You have shorter arms than I do. You said that, right? So I always try to, in my courses and instructionals, address that. I recognize that not everybody has this big wingspan. I also recognize that everybody's, 6'1" and thin. So there's certain things that are going to work for my body that aren't going to work for your body. But I think there's a lot of ways in jiu-jitsu to address that and find other paths that work for people. So, and that's what I like about going through a test is that now the baseline of jiu-jitsu, and you could, when you become a black belt, pass that art on to everybody, to anybody. And that's what jiu-jitsu is about, right? Jiu-jitsu for everyone, right?
Well, you are certainly passed on the art, my friend. And this is a real moment for me personally, because this is the guy. I've been watching this guy for 4 years or so now, and I'm chatting to the guy. This is so cool. Thank you. So you're definitely inspiring people who you and up until about, I think actually I originally did write for another firm other than Combat Sports UK, and I approached you, so I thought, oh, fuck it. What's the worst? He was just going, no, you're right. I said, oh, it's my first thing. Do you mind if I write about you? And you're like, yeah, cool. And I was like, oh, shit. He said, yeah. So, okay, I better write some stuff. So nice. It's real cool. So, your humbleness and your ability to teach and your desire to pass on the art is happening. Obviously, I'm in the UK. You never met me up until this point, so you're doing it to people that you don't even realize. So,
thank you.
Long may that continue, my friend. If you haven't got the BJJ Fanatics course, you should. Listen. I've got it. I'm teaching it now to people. Now I'm practicing. So I say I'm drilling it, and I'm learning the stuff now. So you already passed on to me, and I'm now passing it on to other people, because lapel for me is, I just want to be known as my specialty is the lapel stuff, because there's so many good stuff you can do with lapel. Also, so just a quick one, gi or no gi, what is your preferred?
When I was competing, I was definitely a big no-gi guy. So if you watch most of my videos, you're going to see me doing no-gi. But I've since converted. I think I didn't understand the gi a lot for a long time. And then when I really embraced the lapels, using the bottom of the gi, I fell in love with that because it's so infinite. There's just so many opportunities with that, with the gi. And I think that gi training is a great way for people to start jiu-jitsu. I think, no gi can be a lot of fun, but I like the complicated nature of the gi. I really like it. And I like to be able to slow people down too. I'm 53. So, when I'm rolling with my young guys, it's a lot easier to slow things down with the gi on, right? Than it is without the gi on.
I was competing at a national competition a couple of years ago, and I remember the guy I was against this year, I was against the year before, and he ran around. I mean, I got him, but it was this year. I was like, the next year on, I was like, right, I'm not chasing this fella again because I am too old and too fat and too tired. I can't. So I literally grabbed him and did not let go, hang on for dear life, and then managed to get a baseball bat choke, but
nice.
without just in the collar, put him to sleep.
That's awesome, though.
But he was
love
asleep.
Baseball chokes, dude.
Yeah, I know.
Dude, and I love when people go to sleep on them.
It's the weirdest thing because the first guy I caught with it, his eyes were shut, so that was pretty easy to understand. This guy was like this.
Dude, here's what I love about that. Like, I had a girl training with me, a teenage girl, and she went to a tournament and she got a great baseball bat choke, right? Like, so and it's funny, you watch the video, you see her setting up the grips in the guard, and then she kicks the girl out of her guard. Right, lets her pass, so the girl's thinking she's passing and winning. Yeah, and she's about to. The ref even scores the points, and then boom, she hits that choke, dude. Right, that the ref doesn't even see it. So, like, what I love about that is she fooled everybody. She fooled the ref, she fooled the competitor, and her coach, because her coach is yelling, "Get side, get side, get side." Get side. Here's the 16, and he's the high. She's a white belt, dude. She's a white belt that tricked everybody in the room. How cool is that, right? And that's what I love about the baseball bat chokes is that you're really tricking everybody. It's like true, like magic in that way. It's so much fun, dude. So much fun.
I've got a video on YouTube as well. I do, and it's from the closed guard position, and I talk about a bit of theatrics. So what you do, because we're all working on we're not a subconscious level. We're picking up on what you're doing. And Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, definitely with that. I'm feeling, am I moving? What's he weights this way, weights a bit over. So what I do is talk about when you close guard, and then you set up the baseball bat choke, and then whichever hand is up, that's the leg you're going to drop, but the other leg stays up. And what you do is do a little wiggle, and then drop the leg. Then it's like I just fucked up, but you didn't say that. You just give.
But you give him that feeling.
There you go. he didn't have to tell me, but he's messed up. You haven't messed up. It's all part of the old trick. Then you drop your leg, and they say you pass the guard. And then they go, I'm inside control.
Boom.
Gotcha, motherfucker. Boom.
There's just no better feeling than that. I'm a big baseball bat chokes guy, and in our school, like, it's just a common thing. Like, everybody in here is good at baseball bat chokes. In the past, most schools I've been to, there's one guy that's good at it. There's one guy you got to watch out for that'll catch in baseball bat chokes. So with the advantage of everybody in our school being good at it is we have to now develop layers and depths. There has to be, because I can't just throw one on you and let you pass my guard now. I got to be good at what if I switch to the other side now? Maybe. So that's one of my favorite things is, like, I'll set up my grips here, right? And they know this because I want them to go to this side if I'm going to choke on with this hand, right? Yeah. So I'll get to here, but they know that sometimes. So they think if I go that way, I can shut it down. So what do? I switch the grip now. So they don't even know that I slipped those first grips in. I want them to go this way. They know that I want them to go that way, so they have to go the other way now. But if either way that they go, they're screwed, right? So I just switch. I just take my grip, switch, boom, and hit it on the other side now. And I love that now because that's like really some layers and depths, with the choke, because that's what you want to look at is like, okay, well, if they start to figure it out now, I can't be a one-hit wonder with it. I can't just be like, I can catch it once in a while on a baseball bat choke. I want my whole game to be a bunch of different baseball bat chokes. So that way, there's just no way out of any of it now. That's fun, like, dude.
What you're saying a bit earlier on, though, with the layers is I will teach you how to do a baseball bat choke. No problems at all. But it might not work. And it's not because the technique doesn't work. The technique will work. But if you know what I'm doing, then it might not work. Yep. Then what do? Well, I'm going to give you another option. And you just said there, let's switch around.
Reverse the grips.
All right, okay. Now, there might be the person figures that out. And then you go, right, cool, what next? Good question. What is next? And then you got to start figuring out. And this is the beauty of the whole art is the working out. It's my favorite. I've got a friend of mine, a pro cage fighter, Mike Cohen, and we mess around all the time. And our favorite bit is just us two on the mat together, and we'll just get something and go, right, what can we do from here? And it's my favorite part of training, like the lapel. And what I love about lapel, you can use it to control your opponent from standing. You can chuck it over your shoulder like a kataguruma. You can tight underneath their knee, and pull their knee up and control their knee. You can
it's unlimited.
elbow. Oh, it's just, I love it.
There's so much stuff that you can do with it too. And that's like kind of when you start to add layers and depth, for me, the first layer in depth is if I'm good at this side, I got to get good at this side too. So I want to be bilateral with everything. So, and you can't really do that with your entire game of jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is taught as a right-handed martial art. It's not made for lefties in that way. But because if you think about it, which way do you pass the guard? I always go to the left. Everybody likes being on that left side, right? With their left hand under the head, right? And the right arm. Everybody likes that because the reason that we do is because that when you go to pass the guard, you almost always lead with your right leg. And if you're right-handed, right, which most people are, 65% of the population. So I'm going to lead with my right hand, my right leg, and I'm going to lead with my left arm to my right hand. So you're always going to, it's taught as a right-handed martial art. But if you actually start hacking into that and exploiting that, like I think if somebody just went and took the martial art from white belt and just did everything as a lefty, pass the guard to the right side, everybody sucks at that side. Like if you try to do an arm bar on my left arm versus my right arm, I'm a black belt on my right arm defending an arm bar. I can do goofy shit sometimes, grab my own gi and kind of mess with the articulation of my arm to get to defend it. I can't do that on my left arm in the same way. I get nervous on my left arm. You go to my left arm, I almost immediately tap or I try to get out as quick as I can. But if I feel like any sense of any danger at all, I'm going to tap immediately because I'm not nearly as good at this side. I wouldn't be nearly as good at this side at defending either, probably, because no one ever hardly passes on that side. So if somebody actually exploited that and figured that out, dude, they would be pretty hard to stop.
So make a note. Make a note. If you want to beat,
make a note.
Go to the left-hand side.
Go to that weak side. Yeah, me, it would work. And it probably will work on most people because hardly anybody's good at defending that side because jiu-jitsu is taught as a right-handed martial art.
Well, it's not even to throwing everyone can throw a ball, right? Throw a ball.
Yeah.
What? Left hand. It doesn't.
Yeah.
How does this
right. So then you say, well, then maybe you should be good at both sides. No, you shouldn't be good at both sides because that would be like now using your baseball example, right? You don't learn when you play baseball. They don't say, okay, now practice your right arm or practice your right, practice your left. You got to be able to bat on both sides. You got to be able to catch the ball with both hands. No, you're right-handed. Everybody knows that. Right. So a lot of stuff in jiu-jitsu, you have to kind of decide where do I want to add those layers? Like I'm a triangle guy. So for me, like I'm pretty good at both sides. I'm equally good with leading on my left leg as my right leg. But most people that don't do triangles all the time are almost always going to throw their right leg up first because that's their dominant side if they're right-handed. But for me to take my triangles to the next level, I realized at some point that I got to be good at both sides because they're figuring out this side. And it's a simple thing. Like if I do like a push-pull, right, for a triangle, if I go like this, I go to push one arm through and pull one arm forward, that means I got to throw my right leg up. So if they can defend that by going the opposite way, then that would stop it if I'm not good at my left side. But if I could push-pull and they go to defend it and I'm good at my left side now too, that creates a problem for them. Because I'm bilateral at both sides. But most people aren't going to be, and you're not going to be at every move, but you have to decide where you're going to add that to your game. Where am I going to be really good at both sides?
Well, and then what you did, you went the triangle is too easy. I'll invent the triangle, and then Jesus
right,
Christ. You know, I say my legs, my torso is okay. It's the legs and my arms are not very good. So when you get like a triangle, the triangle one, oh my god, it's like people go, why do you call it the triangle? And you're like, well, I'll show you how it works.
You cry.
And they do it. And they go, I don't like it. Yeah, I know.
I'm gonna cry, right? Like it's the perfect little name.
Where did you come up with these names? One of my favorite ones is the Evil Ninja Choke.
Ooh, that's a good one too.
And I use that. I actually used that in
nice.
It was the Dorset and Hampshire Open, and I won the
nice.
The guy did a subliminal. The guy did again. It was all because you're picking up, and he went. I thought his cardio is failing, and I'm feeling pretty good. So I just applied more pressure.
Boom.
And literally ran a book around the back of the neck. Caught the arms, so he's literally and then just literally off. I mean, looking back, you think, you poor bugger, but I'll rip his neck off.
Dude, that's one of my favorites, dude. I love that move.
Such a simple thing. Just go underneath and then take it up, and then you hear them make that noise. It's not good when you make the noise, but when they make the noise, like,
the gurgle, the death gurgle.
And you're come on, tap, come on. But of course, he can't tap because his hands are in.
Which is even more fun, right? Like you have his hands locked behind his back. He can't tap. And he actually can't say tap because he's gurgling. So he's too busy kind of hitting all the areas, dude. It's very rewarding for you.
Yeah, no, it sucks being on the receiving end of it, but you know,
that's okay.
feels great when you do it to somebody else.
That's what I love about the triangle. Like they're in the most compromised position, and you know, it's not my fault. It's your fault. Dude.
Well, yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, and also it's one of those. If you ever get caught with one, you feel so vulnerable. You're like, oh, it's so shit.
I've been triangle too. So it's like, you know, I'm teaching my students this stuff. It's like, you know, you raise snakes, you're going to get bit by snakes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my wife is a black belt, and she, you know, she's caught me in some triangles, and I was sitting there like, fuck, dude, I hate you. Or sometimes I'm rolling with my students and I feel them doing my stuff. Right. Yeah. Like, there's a great choke on my instructional called the Inquisitor choke. Mm-hmm. It's phenomenal, right? It's a really cool choke where it's so simple. You're grabbing your own lapel. It works so good. So one of my white belts, I'm rolling with him. He's like a 3-stripe white belt, and I'm letting him have sight and stuff. And then all of a sudden he starts slipping the choke on, and I was like, all right, I'm going to see if I can defend it. And I had to do like everything in my freaking power to get out of that fucking choke on a white belt, right? And I was like, it was kind of annoying. It's like, dude, you're using my stuff against me. I don't like that. But I love it. I actually love it. I think it's the greatest thing in the world. But it's kind of funny too, because you're like, that's weird. Like, it's kind of weird to have something that, you know, came from your brain to be in someone else's brain now, and they're doing it to you now, and you're like, oh, this is so bizarre.
It's even better. I mean, it's testament when they do get you and you go, you know why you're so good? It's because the reason you beat me, you understand the reason why you beat me is because I taught you so incredibly well.
That's right. It's my great teaching.
You're welcome. Yeah, but really going, you
get no credit for it at all. I get all the credit. You tapping me out.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great.
So just to finish up on Mikey, let me first of all just say you need to get the BJJ Fanatics thing, because you've done a fantastic job. Is this the first instructional video sold in this fashion that you've got? Or have you
I've done a bunch of stuff. You know, I have a bunch of instructionals out there. There's like the Headhunter, the Bone Breaker, and the Leg Strangler. That was 3 that we did for Jiu-Jitsu Brotherhood. Right, aren't they great?
Yeah.
So those are all out there. They've been out for a minute. And I've done a lot of other stuff on my own. But then, you know, BJJ Fanatics was very different. You know, I even approached it in a completely different way. Like, instead of thinking of it as an instructional, you know, I thought of it more as a course. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is, if you took all my lapel stuff, you know, it's all in my head, or it's on a bunch of scattered videos, or a lot of it's not out there. There's tons of stuff on this new course that, like, I've been banking for the past year or two, like stuff I've been really working through and keeping to myself, and only sharing with like people that I do privates with, that kind of thing. But the course that we did with BJJ Fanatics, we really like taught it as a course. Like, here is all of it. Like, it's literally bookends of like all my lapel stuff. And it's the best stuff, like, really, for like someone who's over 40, because it really slows the game down. Like, we always hear position before submission. That's great. But what happens when you can't hold somebody down for very long, right? You're 40 years old, you're 53 years old, you're 37 years old, and, you know, you're rolling with the 20-year-old, and you're like, holy shit, how am I going to hold this guy down? Or you know, like, I'm 180 and let's say I'm rolling with a guy who's 230. How am I going to hold him down? I can hold him down with his lapels, because it's like a straitjacket on his body. I'm not holding him down. I'm holding his gi, which isn't going anywhere. He can't get out of it. If I can hold his gi down, which is not that hard to do, think of it like an anchor in the water, right? I'm the anchor. I'm not trying to, on top of the boat, trying to push the boat down. I'm at the bottom of it, holding the boat down. And that's really the value of it, is that someone who's over 40, over 50, and really anybody younger too, it's a great system for someone who wants to slow someone's game down, and not just slow them down, but actually submit them. So you can control them and you can submit them. And that's, you know, kind of the gist of all of it. And it's, dude, those chokes in there. If you just did my lapel baseball bat choke from side, if you just kind of stuck with that for a while, you could fuck everybody up with that choke. Mm-hmm. Like, I go to that so much, it's ridiculous. And it's so easy to set up. It's easy to get someone's lapel to your hand. Yeah. That's half the choke. You get that second grip in there, they're not stopping it. It's not going to happen, you know? So it's some great stuff. And I really hope people really see the benefit of it. And I think if you it's something that you can really add to your game and really plug and play with.
100%. Well, I can vouch for that.
Awesome,
Mr. Bidwell, thank you so much for your time. It's an absolute pleasure to finally get to meet someone. Fun, and well, we'll catch up again, maybe on an annual basis. And if I'm ever in America, I'll pop over to your place for some fun, some.
And likewise, I need to get to the UK.
If you ever do the UK, you should definitely come down. It'd be amazing.
That would be cool.
And for now, keep on smashing what you're doing. Keep on hitting those
Oh,
the videos, and if you haven't subscribed to his YouTube channel, you should. Especially if you're into Brazilian
BJJ After 40. Check it out. It's a great community.
Out.
Oh,
Absolutely, on Facebook, on YouTube, by the
Instagram,
course.
all of it, all the social media.
Sure. You're a legend. Thank you, my brother. I'll catch you very, very soon. Yeah.
Yes.
Peace out, y'all. See you in a bit.
Conceive, believe, achieve.
This is former UFC middleweight champion of the world, Michael Bisping,
Paddy the Baddy here. You're listening to Combat Sports UK.
and you're watching Combat Sports UK.